Before we begin, I want to acknowledge that some stories and discussions in this episode of Radiant Resilience may touch on sensitive and potentially triggering topics. These may include themes of child medical trauma and failure to thrive, miscarriage, cancer and terminal illness, death of a spouse, medical malpractice, emotional abuse and manipulation, threats of violence, alcohol and substance abuse. Our goal is to share real life experiences in a respectful and empathetic manner, offering insights into the complexities of the human spirit and the journey towards resilience. However, we understand that some content might be difficult for listeners. We encourage you to prioritize your well being and discretion when deciding to listen. Please remember this podcast is not a substitute for professional advice or support. If you find yourself needing assistance, we urge you to seek help from qualified professionals or trusted support systems. Your mental and emotional health is important to us. Thank you for your courage and for joining us in a space of understanding and compassion. Welcome back, everyone, to Radiant Resilience. I am very excited for this conversation today. I have with me Julie Barth. She is the author of Notes from a Blackberry, From Blackberries to Thorns, and upcoming From Thorns to Blossoms, is a mother to 6 children and a professional writer whose life experiences transcend the boundaries of fiction. Her journey, marked by love, loss, and an unwavering spirit, leads authenticity to her writing. Lends authenticity to her writing, sorry. Julie's narrative style is deeply rooted in her belief that life's true essence is discovered in its most challenging moments. Her work reflects a dedication of finding joy and meaning in every experience, inspiring readers to embrace their own journeys with courage and gratitude. Julie Barth is also the CEO and founder of the Colin James Barth Outreach, a non-for-profit dedicated to helping women-led households with the resources and aid necessary to find security and stability in times of. Her mission is to use her experience as caregiver, special needs parent, and trauma survivor to encourage women in similar situations to think resourcefully and always protect themselves without stigma or feelings of selfishness. Welcome, Julie. How are you doing today?
Well, Tawny, how are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm good. Thanks for being on here. That's quite the bio.
Yeah, I know. My story is one of those, and then
Yeah,
so
as we go on in life, I think all of our stories become that
that's true.
eventually.
Very true. Fair
So
enough.
I'm going to let you start wherever you want to start in your journey and your story. There's lots to tell, it sounds like. Whatever you feel comfortable sharing and wherever you want to start, and we'll go from there.
Okay, so about 25 years ago, I it really started for as long back as I can remember. I met my first husband in third grade. I had moved from one small town to the next small town. And he was like my very first memory. It was back in the
Hmm.
70s. I always had a crush on him. And I remember writing, I was with one of my best friends and I was writing my name, Julie Barth, which would have been my eventual name. And I literally remember writing it.
That's so cute.
It is. I ended up going to the fun fair with him in sixth grade, and he was my first kiss, which he
Hmm.
will, if he were here today, tell you she wasn't mine because he always thought that was really funny to say. Um, but we kind of parted ways in middle school and high school, and I'd see him in the halls. And then after college, I saw him in a bar one time, and it was like I found the missing piece of me. And I was engaged to someone else at the time, and we just became best friends. We were together every minute from the minute we like met up in that bar. It was like when you put together the me practicing my name and everything else, it was almost as if we were like destined to be together.
Yeah, and you were
Um,
like manifesting it basically.
yeah, at such a young age.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is crazy to think about after everything that went, to think that our paths were so tied so young. So again, we met back up in college, and we ended up living together and having my oldest son. And at that time, we decided to move back to the same suburbs that we grew up in. So we returned back home, and we tried very hard to have another child. We'd always, or maybe I did, I guess I can't speak for him, but I always wanted like a big family, and he
Yeah.
had a huge family.
Okay.
we were in our late 20s and we decided to expand our family. And I had a couple miscarriages and then I got pregnant with my second daughter, Tatum. And right out the gate, like things just didn't add up. Like I went in and they'd say, "Oh, congratulations, you're 6 weeks pregnant." And then I'd go at 10 weeks and they'd say, "Oh, congratulations, you're 6 weeks pregnant." And by the
Really?
yeah, and by
What
the
what was your reaction like at that time? Were you like, no, actually?
I think that it went on because I don't remember. I had frequent ones just because I had the miscarriages. So at first I was
Okay.
like, they're the size of what? A pencil tip. It's just measurement
Mhm.
error. But by 12 weeks, them saying, I think by then they had said you're 10 weeks or whatever it was, something just didn't sound right. I had a placental tear and I thought I was going to lose her and I didn't. And
Mm.
it all resolved. But at about 12 weeks, she just stopped. There was always a problem with her growing, like she just didn't grow. And it was like at 2 weeks, she would grow 1 week. At 3 weeks, she'd grow
Mm.
like a week and a half. So for some reason, they kept telling us, and it was back in 2000. So the technology back then, there wasn't internet, thank God, because I'd probably go insane Googling it.
Yeah.
But
Sure.
there really wasn't much out there. So we just went on blind faith and they would say, "We know she's sick, but we don't know what that means." And then,
Terrifying to hear while you're pregnant. And then like you can't confirm what that is and what that looks like. That's got to be
right,
just so hard.
it is. And every time I would go in, I'd have a new doctor that would say something new. So, like a doctor, one doctor told me that she would come out because I had a swallow study and never be able to breathe.
Oh my
And then I was told she had a trisomy 18, which is 318 chromosomes. Then we had an amniocentesis. She didn't. And regardless of what was going on, I think I had 40 some ultrasounds.
wow.
No one could ever show me that something was wrong. There were no genetic markers. There wasn't, because there were all sorts of markers that they would have seen. She was just small, and that's all they
Mhm.
could tell me. So I just went on blind faith, and at 37 weeks, I think I was a mess. Like it wasn't about
Mhm.
her. It was just I had enough. I was like, let's get her out here, see what we're dealing with. And they thought she was about 5 pounds. So they just delivered her at a regular hospital and they broke my water bag and all hell broke loose.
My gosh.
And so and because the placenta was wrapped around her neck. So I had an emergency C-section. She came out, she was only like 3 pounds. So when she came out, yeah, they weren't prepared for her, obviously. And they used the wrong size innovation tube.
Oh my
And when they
gosh.
did that, yeah, they stripped her vocal cords, which that is fast forward 6 months from that all led up to. So when she came out, she's in the NICU for 3 months. And a lot of what we were dealing with wasn't anything from birth. It wasn't her
Mm.
genetics. It wasn't her. It was more about what happened at birth. But instead of focusing on that, because nobody really wanted to talk about that, they were all looking for this global what is wrong with Tatum? Why? And the damage to her throat led to a trach, led to her throwing up every day, led to her non growing. And I don't know if you've ever heard of something called failure to thrive. Um,
I feel like I've heard of it, but definitely explain it.
when you're in the NICU and they have no reason why your child is not growing well or doing well, they just call it failure to thrive. And it basically means like your child just is not thriving. And it's not a medical diagnosis, but they just throw it out there like, oh, it's failure to thrive.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so we were at Children's Memorial in Chicago. Our doctor was one of the most famous surgeons in the world, and things just weren't adding up. No matter what we did, I couldn't get her out of the hospital. We did get her out of the hospital, and she still wasn't growing. At the age of
Mm.
1, she was 8 pounds. So if you can imagine, she's like this big at the age of
Yeah.
1. Her first walking shoes were like 0 to 3 months.
Oh my.
Yeah, so we had nursing, she had a trach, and then that led to going to all sorts of hospitals, trying to figure out what was going on with her. And instead of really focusing on, let's just take care of the symptoms, a lot of times we would go in and they would be like, what's wrong with her? And they'd say things like, we know something's wrong because she looks funny. And as a mom, it still hurts when someone says your kid looks funny, but
Sure.
yeah, thanks. No thanks. So we basically, I just kept with it and Every milestone they said she wouldn't make, she did. Every time they said she couldn't do something, she did it. She's walked on time. We had a Passamere valve, so she talked on time, but she just wouldn't grow. So we had her reconstructive airway. It took 40 some surgeries, and by this time, she's about 3 years old. And I had another son, and we would be out shopping, and people would come up to me and they'd say, "Is your daughter the one on that Discovery Channel show?" And I was like, I don't know. It was right about then that the internet started taking off. So I went home, and one of my best friends said to me, "I know what Tatum has." And I was like, "Good for you," because I've been to Boston's. And she said she has primordial dwarfism. And I was brushing it off like, you don't know. The doctors would have known. And I went home and I Googled it, and sure enough, up popped Tatum, like the way she looks, her history, everything about
Oh,
her.
wow.
Yeah. We've never had her officially diagnosed. Everything about her speaks to the primordial dwarfism. I think if she had not had the early incident, she probably would have grown a little bit better, maybe. But they kept explaining that it was her placental tear and she just didn't get enough cells. So there would be things just being thrown at us night and day. She would have special needs. Again, everything that they said would happen didn't happen. We dealt with a lot of ups and downs and a lot of medical malpractice. Yeah, I'd bring her in for a cold. The next thing I knew, she was like flatlining, just
Oh my
craziness.
gosh.
Yeah, it was a crazy time in my life. So that happened. That went on for about 4 years. And finally, we got the trach out. Colin and I were finally starting to rejoin life because we had really just taken a hiatus from our friends,
Sure.
couldn't do anything. So again, we had our son, and then we had another daughter. So we had four young children. My oldest was 10 by this time. And then our youngest was 6 months, and Tatum was sandwiched in between there. So
Yeah.
Colin worked for the Board of Trade, and he just started being really crabby. And he wasn't, he was never like the sunniest guy, but we just were really having a hard time connecting. He was very withdrawn, and we were a huge part of the community. So we were having this huge Halloween party. And I finally said to him, and he was back and forth to the doctor. And I said, just go to the emergency room, figure out what's going on, and just get it taken care of because, I need you.
Mm.
And within 3 or 4 hours, I was called. I went to the hospital anyway, but they said he had stage 4 pancreatic cancer. He had 2 weeks to live, take him home, let him say goodbye to his children. Yeah, it was like it had spread, it metastasized to 3 different organs. And
Oh my
there's
gosh.
still nothing for pancreatic cancer, unfortunately. Your odds are very low. But back in 2007, I believe, there was no hope for him. So
Mhm.
he did end up living 16 months.
Okay.
Some of them were a blessing, a lot of them were not so much. But
So did he do treatment at all? Did he try chemo? He did do chemo and stuff.
Yeah, we found a study. He was down at the University of Chicago, and he was like their star patient because he was only 34 years old.
That's so
S-
young.
Yeah, and it was
Oh,
it was genetically linked. His mother had
wow.
ovarian cancer, and she lived like to her 70s. She outlived him, but so we felt like she made it, he could make it, and he literally was their star patient. The tumor was shrinking to the point where they thought he could have surgery.
Oh,
We'd show up
wow.
for chemo and they'd find a room for us. Like for anyone who's ever been to chemo, it's like they have these little cubicles. We walked in and they would put us in a room. It was the
Mm.
most bizarre thing. But he missed one of the sessions. And again, you can't, I don't know if it was contributing or not, but he wanted to go to Cooperstown with our oldest son and to a baseball tournament just in case he wasn't around longer. And then from there, everything just fell apart.
Mm.
So on Tuesdays, I would go down to chemo with him, and I had a Blackberry. I don't know if you
Yes,
know
I
what that
remember. I
is.
never had one,
You
but
did.
I think I skipped. I don't know. I had one of the very first smartphones that was similar to a BlackBerry. Do you remember the ones that you flipped them sideways and then they opened up and you had the full keyboard in there?
Keyboard. Yeah.
They were actually the BlackBerry brand, but it was like something similar. So yes, I totally remember
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Well, I just loved it because it had the click, like you could feel click, click. I would take him down to chemo, and I started writing Tatum's story because it was so unimaginable. I was unpacking all of this. I think I was angry. I was overwhelmed. I also felt a little vindicated because she was doing so well at that point. And so I started writing her story, and I would email it back to myself. And then it necessarily flowed into his story, and it was real time. And So I had that sitting on my laptop. He passed away in 2009.
Mm,
And yeah, I left it on my laptop. I didn't want to touch it. It was just really a testament. I wrote it for him,
mm,
mostly for our children, so that they would know of his courage and everything he went through. And I never intended to release it to anyone, but I went through another situation later on and read through it, finally had the courage to open it up and really felt I owed him that.
mm.
And I owe other people who are in a position where you're caregiving to someone who's really sick, because it's like standing in front of the Twin Towers. Like, you can't imagine what you're going to go through when someone says your husband has cancer, or your
Yeah.
daughter, or your son, you you've seen it in movies, maybe, are on TV,
Yeah.
but yeah, you just can't imagine the suffering and the stages and just losing someone. And
So,
yeah.
how do you feel now after those experiences towards the medical community in the world? I don't know. I feel like just listening to your story, and if that were me, I feel like I would have a lot of anger towards all of that stuff.
I think I used to. I
Yeah.
really did. I was very angry. I wasn't angry that things happen, because things happen. Here's the
Mm,
thing is, I don't think that any doctor, I shouldn't say any, but I would say the vast majority of people that go into medicine never intend to hurt anybody. Their intentions are good. They want to help people.
sure.
My problem comes when they believe that they're above other people, or that
Mhm.
when they have that God syndrome. And my other problem is when they don't take responsibility for when things go bad in any
Yeah.
occupation. When you make a mistake, you have to own up to it. But for some reason, the medical community, and I can imagine a lot of it is litigation. They
Mm,
don't want to get sued. They can lose their practice. They could lose their whole livelihood, but that still doesn't make it okay. I look back at that time and I really do believe that people had the best of intentions. They tried to do
sure.
what they could. There were a couple that I met along the way that were unconscionable to me. And the things that, mostly Tatum, I think the
Yeah.
doctors with Colin, he was just a research person to a lot of
Mhm.
them. And that it is what it is. If we didn't have those people who are willing to be put in that position, then we wouldn't have the medicines that we do. I think it's
Yeah.
ridiculous that we hold off when someone's in their final stages. If you want to take a drug, I don't understand why people aren't like, sure, let's give it a try. Because
Yeah.
there's so many drugs out there to try, but you to get into one of these, yeah, I had to jump through hoops to try and find different. And then he was kicked out of. The tumor ended up growing like 0.01, and he immediately was like, "You're out." And that's when things went really south. And so I can't say it would have worked for him, but the fact that it was like, "Oh, sorry, we were so easily disposed." So
Yeah.
again, I think that anytime you take something human and you put money attached to it and
Mm,
you put people's reputation, I've seen the best in people and I've seen the worst in people. But again, I think that's in any profession. And I can
sure.
say that now because it's been Tatum's 24 now.
Yeah.
So I've had 24 years to heal. But yeah, the initial reason that I wrote the book on my Blackberry is because I was unpacking so much anger. People
Yeah.
would ask about Tatum, and I would just be like, "Oh, you want to hear?" And it was like you get those like
Mhm.
crazy eyes. Well, let me tell you some stories.
And your
Uh,
blood pressure probably started going up, and it was probably so disruptive to your nervous system. But then you felt like you had to get that energy out too, right?
Yeah, it's explosive. It's
Yeah.
just, and the thing is that there's nobody to be angry with. The parts where like maybe somebody did something wrong, you can only be angry to a certain extent.
Yeah.
When Colin got cancer, or Tatum got, you're angry, but who are you mad at? You're not mad at the person who's sick. And so you've got this
Yeah.
anger and you have nowhere to deposit it. And I think as being on the inside and then being on the outside of it, I think when you meet people and they're going through situations like this, they come across as very hostile and very angry, and
Mm,
it makes people uncomfortable. So they step away.
mm,
And when you step away, people then withdraw even more. So it's this dynamic of uncomfortableness that really leads to a whole lot of isolation and loneliness. And
mm,
I think that after reading my book, like I said, 15 years later, I not only released it because I felt like the world needed to know of Tatum and Colin's courage. I had a couple of people read it and they said to me, "Gosh, you were so lonely."
mm,
And I I didn't even know I was lonely. I think that part of me, I know that I released it so that people would feel less alone in
Mm,
what they were going through.
yeah.
We all, again, not only the anger, but like the resentment. Like I can remember I was on the phone with someone and Colin never came. That was my husband's name. He never came out of his room because he was so sick of me. Had these four kids running around and the house was chaotic. And he came downstairs to go to the masseuse. Of course, he had every right to go to the massage. And it wasn't like a spa day, but to me back then, everything was going on. And I said something flippant to one of my friends. Oh, Colin had to go and get a massage. And he heard me. And that moment, the moments like those where you say things or you feel things, even if it's in your inside voice and nobody hears you, those things stick with you and they change the way that you feel about yourself. So coming off of, and another thing is when someone really believes that you can save them, because he did, especially later on in his illness when his brain wasn't working at 100%, he truly thought I could save him. And
Mm,
when someone puts that on you, you falsely start believing you can. So when he passed away, I had all of these feelings that I didn't share with anyone because I felt like people were sick of hearing about it, or I just wanted to put it away. It had been not only 4 years of Tatum, but then 16 months of Colin. And as everyone else was starting to grieve and ready to grieve, I had been grieving for
yeah.
16 months when watching every day a little bit of him disappear. So it was difficult, I think, coming out of it when everyone wanted me to sit in my grief. And I felt as if I wasn't sad enough or I wasn't acting.
Mm,
So that kind of led into the second situation I got
mhm.
into. I met a gentleman in my home who was working on my house, and he was 10 years younger than me. And he didn't want to hear about what was going on. He didn't care about my feelings, never asked how I was. And it felt right. It felt, oh, thank God I can be with someone and I don't have to grieve. I can go out and not feel bad for not feeling bad. And it was very freeing. So
That's
after
so
about
interesting to me.
it is. And it's taken me again 15 years to because you when it ended very badly and
Mm,
it was a very emotionally abusive relationship, a decade really of torture and hell. And you sit back and you think, why did I do that? Why did I stay in that? Why? Because if someone had asked me at any point in my life, would you ever let someone treat your children badly? I'd say, oh, of course not. Would you
yeah.
ever let someone call you names? No, of course not. No, I consider myself a fairly strong, independent, intelligent person. And to be diminished to what I was a
Mm,
shell. I don't even recognize who that person was. So I think it's important again, and that's why I released my first and second book, because it's important to trace back why we make the decisions we do, because it's easy to second guess yourself, to say that was a dumb decision or to regret a decision that you made. But I believe that if you made it at the time with the information you had available
mm,
and with good intent, even if it doesn't end up the way that you want it to, that doesn't mean that you were stupid or that you made a bad decision. You just made the decision that you did with the hope of it ending up. And it doesn't always end up the way that you want. My second book, I think I released to help other people who have been in these situations recognize that it's not their fault to stop
mm.
beating yourself up about it. Because it's easy to, again, play hindsight is 2020 and say, well,
Always.
I
Yeah.
should have seen that coming. And I did see it coming. I'm not going to lie. People always say, what red flags were there? He was a walking red flag, and nothing about him wasn't a red
Yeah.
flag.
Will you share some of that stuff that just for anyone listening, if they're maybe thinking they're in that type of a situation?
Yeah, he just didn't care about me. If I cried, it was annoying to him. If I had a feeling, he
Oh,
didn't want to hear it. And again, coming out of Colin and having so many feelings, it was still working. Can you hear
uh,
me? Here, is it not? Yeah.
Okay, I think you're back. So let's backtrack a little bit.
Okay.
I don't know what happened. I don't know if it's my internet or yours, but let's backtrack. So you were starting to talk about the red flags when it started to cut out.
Yeah. So he just didn't want to know anything about me.
Mhm.
I was a nuisance. My feelings were a nuisance.
Mhm.
Anytime I needed something, he'd be out the door and gone.
But
Yeah,
in the
that was
beginning, you wanted that, you said, right? You didn't
correct.
want that. Like, how far into it were you? Oh, actually, I
This is
need
real.
that. Huh?
I think that I felt like I was a wounded person. I
Of
felt
course, after
broken.
everything you went through. Yeah.
Yeah, and he told the story of he was engaged and his fiance had cheated on him. So it was almost like, "Oh, you're broken, I'm broken. Great, we can heal
Mhm.
one another." I would say when it really got bad, because I had nursing care, I had these 4 little kids running around, and we had our lives, and then I had my lives with my children. And I kept them very separate for a
Oh.
reason. I wasn't ready for anyone to take Colin's place. So I was like, "Oh, you don't want a parent? Great, because I don't want someone to take that space."
Mhm.
I think the change really happened when I decided I wanted to have more children because I had always wanted to have a big family with Colin, and he was okay with it. So I ended up getting pregnant with our 5th daughter, IVF, ironically, because everyone always thought it was an oops, and I never corrected. And then we moved away, and we moved many states over to North Carolina, and looking at houses together, he wanted the house that was up on a mountain with nobody around. He didn't want one in
Mhm.
a subdivision. He didn't want so I thought, great, this will be our little retreat. I'll just leave Julie Barth behind. I don't want to be her anymore. Because even saying my name I'd say, hi, I'm Julie Barth. And people would go, oh, and there would be that immediate look of pity. Or we would see
Mhm.
people in the grocery store and they would just start crying when they saw me. And it was understandable because they were just grieving. Seeing me just brought back memories of everything Colin went through because we were so well known in the town.
Yeah, but
Um,
still, that's, I think
yeah,
you're
yeah,
the
it was,
one that had a front seat to that entire
yeah,
thing. I don't know that they could at least wait until they get home to start crying. Like,
yeah, yeah, and it was a lot.
that's a lot.
Yeah, it was a lot, and I couldn't sit in it. I think moving was not that bad of an idea. Moving with the person I did was not a great idea. Maybe adding to our family from the outside didn't seem like a good idea. But I will say that if I had not done that, I don't know if I'd still be here. My
Mhm.
children have always been what picked me out of my grief and really saved me. So when our 5th child came along, we were up on this mountain and things really just started to fall apart. He was never there. He was really horrible to my children. And I just kept trying to make it work over and over.
Did he treat the one you guys had together differently than the other four?
Yeah, to a certain extent. He was never around though. When I say never around people, again, you can't really imagine someone not being around. He would take jobs out of town. He was an alcoholic, so he would come home for 2 hours at night, maybe after everyone was in bed. He had very limited time with them, and at the time, that was a big argument between the 2 of us.
Yeah.
Now looking back, thank God. Like, he did us all a favor. I hate to say it, but
Mm.
it's true. But yeah, it was definitely a you're mine and you're not mine
Mm.
mentality. But at the same time, he came home one day and forced my children to start calling him dad. And we weren't allowed to talk to Colin. If I put pictures out of Colin, it would make him very mad. No one in the house was allowed to say anything about Colin. And I just packed Colin away into a box and just said, okay, I guess this is my new life and it is what it is. And I'm just going to move forward. Yeah.
So, did he get physically abusive?
Toward the end, yeah.
Yeah.
It was more just the threat and talking about red flags and emotional abuse. It's physical abuse. I can't imagine the pain that comes with that. But in emotional abuse, they never touch you really. They physically threaten you. He would pretend to put his hand around my neck. Oh, if I could just kick in doors if I were trying to get away from him, throw furniture. He always picked like whatever was very important to me and he would smash it in front of me. And it started, I remember the first time he did that because any other time he would do these bizarre things where I would be thinking we were going one way and he would just make a shift. Like he was going to go, we were still in our small town with the kids, and he was going to go with his mother on a trip, and he was going to be gone for a month. I was sad. I was like, why are you leaving for an entire month? And I wasn't saying you can't go or like, how dare you? It literally was like, I'm going to be really sad if you go. Do you really have to go? And he ended up hanging up on me and saying, right before he hung up, he said, duck, goose. And he just hung up on me. And I just stood there with the phone in my hand, just unreal. What? And that was one of the first, what is going on here? It was the
Mhm.
confusion, the constant, what does that mean? And then when I finally picked up the phone, because he wouldn't pick up the phone for me, he said, oh, passive aggressive. And I was like, okay, I don't even know what that means. But it was stuff like that where I was like, okay. And when somebody confuses you and makes you feel like you should get it because it's so clear to them,
Mhm.
that you almost say, okay, I didn't mean it, but I guess he took me wrong. So I'm just going to be more careful next time. But when you're in a situation like that, they want that. They want the confusion. They want you to be unsteady all the time. They want you to second guess yourself and to think that you've done something wrong and push you by using all of your insecurities against you. And then when you react, they say, see how crazy you are? Yeah. So you go into one situation with them. I can remember going into an argument. It wasn't even an argument. I would say, are you coming home tonight? And he'd say, should I come home? And I'd be like, Yeah, I think so. What time are you going to be home? Well, what time do you think I'm going to be home? And it would
Oh
be like
my
this.
gosh.
And it would go on until I finally would be like, oh my gosh, forget it, or get really mad and be like, and then he'd be like, see, can't you just have a normal conversation? And I was like, I literally
You're
just
like,
wanted to
can't
know it.
you? Like, what?
Yeah, but they make you so fearful at the same
Mm,
time and then there would be these big explosions, and I would beg him to come back because I was terrified of being alone. And
mm.
then he would come home and give me the silent treatment for 3 days while I cried and apologized and said I wouldn't do it again and tried very hard until 2 weeks later he'd push every button until it would happen again.
Oh
So it
my
was
gosh.
literally just this cycle of craziness in my home. I started developing symptoms of fibromyalgia. I couldn't get out of bed, where I used to run 10 miles a day. I couldn't literally walk to the mailbox, and I was going to specialists and they'd say there's nothing. My spine was starting to twist. I couldn't walk. My joints were dislocating. Like, just anyone who believes that you don't have a brain body connection should
Mm.
study what I went through, because within 3 years of divorcing him, I'm back to running like 8 miles a day. So
Oh.
I don't take a single medication. Besides getting older and the joints, pain, stiffness, it was debilitating. I literally couldn't move for many years.
So what was the
Uh,
kicker for you to finally get out?
so when we got to North Carolina, Tatum, the one who has primordial dwarfism, also came down with a rare form of cancer. So
Oh
she
my
had,
goodness.
yeah. So when she turned 13, everything pretty much had resolved with her, and she was diagnosed with this connective tissue cancer where the only cure for it was removal of the cancerous area. So it was a lot. She had most of her right side removed and her legs grafted to fill in. And he was never there. He wasn't there to help with the kids. He wasn't there. So I was shuffling kids everywhere and just trying to keep everything in check. When we were falling apart, the kids needed someone. I had no family. I'd left everyone back home. And in the interim, he was going back to our hometown and telling everyone that I was crazy and abusive to him. And I had cut
Wow.
ties with everyone. They had no reason to not believe him. Besides that, they should have, because I had known them from grammar school. But
Yeah.
yeah, so when I decided we just couldn't live on this mountain anymore, he told me basically, we can't go back to Chicago because you don't have any friends or family. Everyone hates you there.
Which
So we
he
end up,
orchestrated, it sounds like.
I can't say that I am an angel, but I've never done anything intentionally to
Yeah.
hurt anyone. So I can't imagine that if they didn't like me, regardless of why, we ended up moving further south. And when we moved further south, we moved near his parents. And that's when things just nosedived. He
Mm.
started taking jobs. He started doing a whole lot of drugs, and he became really violent and mean. We separated one time and I was doing great. And unfortunately came back and said he wanted to get back together. So I said, okay. And it was at that point that about 6 months after he came back that my third youngest came to me, and he's always been a very tender heart. He is just an amazing kid. And he went through a really rough time because my ex-husband was very mean to him. And he sat me down and basically said, Mom, I don't understand why you keep letting him back in. He's threatened to kill you. He's threatened to kill me because he did threaten to kill him several
Oh my
times.
gosh.
And he said, This has ruined my childhood. I've slept with a
Mm.
weapon under my bed since as long as I can remember because I'm so afraid of him. And at that moment, I thought, if I don't care enough about myself, that's one thing to get out of this, but I have to get out of this for my kids. And
Mm.
that was the beginning of him coming for me. And he came after me. He had, after we separated the first time, whatever lawyer he had sought counsel from must have said to him, You're not getting anything. So I believe he came back just to set me up. So the whole time that he was back, he was video recording me. He was taking text messages that I was sending to him, sending him out in group chats. He was calling the police and saying that I was calling the police because it doesn't register. It registers to the house, not to the person that's calling.
My gosh.
Yeah, just
Did you know any of
unbelievable.
that was going on at the time?
No, he was taking his money and he was converting it into coins. No, I had no idea the depths of what he was doing.
Wow.
Yeah, it was, I really was set up. So he took a job that he worked out of town full time. And so we didn't live together really. And in the state of South Carolina, you need to be separated for an entire year legally.
Yeah, I have
So
friends that got separated in North Carolina, and I think it's similar. And yeah, they had issues for a really long time, and then they were like, now we have to do this whole thing for a year. Like,
for a year. Yeah.
wow.
And we had been separate really for almost 2 years because he worked out. He didn't come home for 6 months during COVID
Yeah.
and he didn't he didn't contact his children or anything. So we had divorce papers in place and I was waiting for him to sign just to, because I wanted it to be amicable. Why would you not?
Of course, yeah.
In the interim, he had been cheating on us our entire time together. And he said, I'm gonna move on. You're free to move on. I started dating someone. He hired a private investigator to follow me, which he didn't have to. He could have just stopped downtown where we live because I wasn't, I was out in the open. I didn't think I was doing anything wrong. And he came back, sued me, said that I was an adulterer and that I was an unfit parent, put my children through hell. The courts came in, they did this whole investigation when it should have been clear as day. Then I really had to fight to get custody of them. And he never wanted custody because he never lost anything. I never said he couldn't see the kids, but he was saying to the court that I was tainting his kids against him. Just crazy. It was a crazy, out of all the situations I had been through, I think that was one of the toughest because my integrity, my reputation. Yeah, and here I had raised 6 kids all on my own, and I was being painted as someone who didn't care about their kids and a drug
Mm.
addict and a crazy person and a mental illness, and that was hard to stomach. I had to open up my home. People at school knew that he was making these allegations against me. I didn't know anyone here either because we had just moved here, so luckily, the people that I met here did see. They were here, they saw, they knew. I don't think there was a person that didn't know what was going on in our house. I don't think anyone knew to the extent. But yeah, after 2-year battle and all my savings and paying him off, because that's all he wanted was money. I now have
Mm.
sole custody and yeah, so that was a really tough situation to get through. But coming out of that, that is why I've started the Colin James Barth Outreach, which is my first husband. The thought behind it is as a woman, I've been in many different situations where I've needed help. Either that's a special needs mom whose daughter I need funds, or the caregiver, or the widow, or the emotionally abused wife who, right out the gate, I had to write a check for $3,000 for a retaining fee I didn't have. So our charity is founded under the belief that you shouldn't have to lose it all to get assistance, because often that's what happens. When you're not eligible for anything until you've lost it all.
Yeah, which is crazy.
Mhm.
I talked to somebody a long time ago about just like sending your kids to college, and I thought that was a good example too. It's college is so expensive. And then if you're just like a middle class citizen and you've saved money, but you haven't saved still quite enough to cover the entire amount, you get no help. So it's
Yeah,
almost better to just literally have nothing. And then you
right.
get grants and you get scholar. There's a lot more help if you have nothing. And I think that's how a lot of those programs are, unfortunately. You have to have nothing, which
Nothing.
is
Yeah.
crazy.
It is. It is. And it's like you literally want, you have to give everything away. I remember, and my daughter's speaking, my daughter is in college right now. And I remember sitting down to do her FICA or whatever it is. And I was like, yay, we are like 125% below the poverty level. So there was like a yay. And then there was like a, oh my God, like
We're
I'm that poor.
120, we're down below the poverty level. Oh my God.
Yay, but ouch. Yeah. And so that's what our charity is funded on. We hope to, because when I first started it, people were like, oh, they do that. And I was like, if they do, it's like a tree falling in the woods. It doesn't exist if nobody knows about it. And I was in a position where I couldn't find it. So we're treating our charity as like a concierge service where we're finding like these littler programs because the government, whenever you get into a government program, you have got to be poor and
Mhm.
destitute. So we're trying to match people with little donations and little foundations that will help them that they're eligible for and really get them a plan of action and say, call here. Because when you hit these crises, I'm dealing with trying to take care of 6 kids, trying to fight him off, mandated counseling that I couldn't make, guardian ad litem who's coming to my house. And he was a contractor, and my house was like, I had little kids, and he left all sorts of like electrical stuff hanging everywhere. He didn't fix anything. So if the guardian had come, he had left all these things out. So it looks like I'm a bad parent. It's just all these little things that you don't know you have to do until you have to do them.
Yeah.
So we're hoping to just give people like an action plan, networking, helping them find jobs because I was out of the workforce for 10 years and no work experience. So
Yeah.
what am I eligible for to get minimum wage? That's not going to pay the bills. Yeah. So we're tackling on all of that stuff one day at a time, but just trying to take a look at systematically how things are set up that you can't get ahead. And it's
Mhm.
sad because nobody should be fighting so hard to just
Yeah.
survive.
Yeah, and people fall on hard times. It happens. Life happens. Things happen. And sometimes that's all they need is that little bit of assistance, whether it be financial or just like advice to get you, what do I do now in this situation? I don't even know who to talk to, where to go, like, and to have that support system, I'm sure is huge for these people.
Yeah, and I think just having someone make you feel like you're back in control of your own life.
Mhm.
And then on top of it, so you get assistance and then you can't make any more money because if you make money, they take it.
They take
And
it
you don't,
away.
yeah, and you're not, you can build, but you're going to hit that threshold where you're working full time to make what they're paying for you to make. And if you make
Yeah.
any, plus you're working full time, so then you have the choice. So it's just it's a crazy system that we hope to be like that canopy in between so
Mhm.
that we can support you where you are to like soar instead of having to dig you out after you've reached bottom.
Yeah. 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 It seems like it would be so much more effective to
You think?
not let people hit the absolute bottom and try to dig them out of that. Let's help them in between. I've talked a lot about health insurance, and I think there's Medicaid, which, like you said, you have to have nothing in order to get. But then the regular health insurance, there's such a huge gap in between, like you said, you have to make nothing for Medicaid, but then it costs so much money for health insurance, even if you get it through work sometimes, that you have to make a lot more money. There's a huge gap in between the two of those. There should be a middle option because it's just
100%.
insane. Like I know people that pay $600 to $900 a month for health insurance, and it's you not everybody can afford that. So where is there something in between? So I love that you're doing that because I think there's a lot of programs like that we need more in between.
Yeah. And there are a lot of organizations out there that you would never know exist. And they're there because they want to help people. We're just hoping to, if I've had a couple women since I opened come to me and just to see the relief in their face that anybody even
Mhm.
cares or is taking the time to listen and to say, oh, I've been there. Even if we can't help you, I at least can tell you the steps to take.
Yeah.
When Tatum was a baby, she had a trach and we couldn't get her out of the hospital because it was back in 2000, and the insurance companies were systematically denying kids with trachs and saying that the parents could care for them. Well, true to me, I couldn't get her out. So I was calling Channel 5 News. And sure enough, I was on Channel 5 News going after Blue Cross Blue Shield. And we got her out of the hospital, but not because of any of my efforts. But I got a call about 6 months after that, maybe eight. And one of my friends had set me up with this girl who was also in Chicago, and her child just was born and had a trach. And she was just calling to like get my help. And I, like right out the gate, I was like, just know that you need to get nursing care now, like now. And I said, it's going to be a huge hassle. You're going to have to check. And here's this special organization I found because I had to find this one. And she goes, "Oh, no, it's not a problem." I'm like, "Oh, you have no idea." And she's like, "No, really." She's some woman was on the Channel 5 News like 6 months ago going after the Blue Shield. And she goes, "And now it's mandatory if your child has a trach that you get nursing care." I often refer back to that
Mm,
story
yeah.
because it was in that moment that I recognized that if we all, when you get through something that's really difficult and hard, we all want to put it in our past, don't we? Just move
Yeah.
along and forget about it. But if we all stopped at that point and said, all right, how can I save somebody from doing this? Oh,
Mm,
it'd be such a better place.
yeah.
So that's why after I went through my divorce, and it would have been very easy for me to move along and not do anything and not put it out there and tell people what I've been through, because it is shameful and it's hard to talk about, and it's not a happy story. But I often refer back to that story in itself. If it helps one person navigate, then the meaninglessness of illness and losing Colin and being in an abusive relationship, it makes it meaningful. And I think anytime you go through something, if you can turn it into a positive and look back and think, that's why I had to go through it, it's a very healing feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. And I believe that we all have our hard stuff. Life is not an easy thing. And so if we keep quiet about all this stuff, then we just assume that everybody's just living a normal life and we're the only ones that are struggling. So I think there's a
Yeah.
lot of power in sharing your stories, and you never know, like you said, who's listening or who it's going to affect down the line. I think it's so important. And I think speaking the truth about the feelings and stuff too, like not just saying you were in an abusive relationship, you have a special needs daughter. There is so much more to that than just that surface level. And if we don't talk about the depths of the feelings and stuff like that too, then there's not as much compassion in the world either. Like people need to understand what that's like to go through. Oh, did I lose you? Oh, are you there? Oh no. Are we there? Hello? Can you hear me? Oh, are we back?
We're back. I don't know if it's my internet. I rarely have that happen. So sorry about that.
No, that's okay. It happens. Where did you hear me last?
You were just talking about how if you share your experience, that
Yeah,
there's power in that. So,
and I think that if we share the deep rooted feelings in it too, because I think some people just share the surface level, oh, I went through this or I went through that. If we share the deep rooted feelings behind it, it makes everybody have a little bit more compassion for these situations and understand them, because I don't think that anybody can fully understand unless they've actually walked in your shoes and walked that path. It's impossible. So if we share it and we talk about the ugliness of it too,
yeah.
as hard as I understand that is, then I think people have a lot more compassion and understanding of the situations.
Yeah, and I also think with emotional abuse, it is a hard situation to leave. In exposing someone else's bad behavior,
Mm.
you usually have to expose your own, because
Mm.
toxic relationships don't happen in a bubble. I did a lot of stupid stuff that I am not proud of. And so coming forward and saying I was emotionally abused, first of all, you wonder. if people are going to believe you, because that's not even a thing. You can't go, there's no such thing as emotional abuse in the court. So if you say I was emotionally abused, they're like, that's not a thing. But it is. And
Yeah.
economic, financial, emotional abuse are very difficult situations to be out of. And I found that when I came forward and I did tell my story, I wasn't believed. So you're further victimized by the
Yeah.
courts who say that's not a thing. Look, you acted crazy. They were looking into my counseling notes. Of course, he didn't have any because he didn't think he had a problem. And he
Yeah.
was setting me up. There's a lot of shame and guilt in coming forward. So people stay in these situations.
Yeah.
And if I can give someone the the site that I'm looking at now, because when you're in it, it's so hard to see the fog that's in front of you. Your whole goal is to keep this toxic relationship together, and you'll do anything to keep it. You literally feel like you're going to die because not only is your adrenaline just up and down everywhere, they've convinced you that you cannot live without them, and you start believing
Mm.
it. And so you're so tunnel focused that you don't even, I'm sure after we finally split up, I could see my friends being like, welcome to the party. Like, where have you
Mm.
been? I'm glad you're back, because
Yeah.
I wasn't myself anymore. But I will say that if anyone out there is listening, like, those relationships do not get better. There is no way to heal them. I tried counseling, I tried couples counseling. Like, he did not want it to work. He enjoyed abusing me. He enjoyed watching me mentally tortured. After he left, I found a chair. So I would go out on the front porch so the kids didn't see me cry. And I would just sit out on my front porch and cry. And after he left, I looked to the left, and I had never seen it before because it was usually at night when I was out there crying. And he had chairs placed all around the house where he would say he was gone and he would leave to elicit this like panic attack in me, because I would have panic attacks and beg him to come back. And he would sit in these chairs and watch me from different places in the yard, maybe even record me. I don't know, but he actually enjoyed the torture of it. So no matter how hard I tried, the harder I tried, the worse it became. Yeah. And that's the thing is, someone said something yesterday to me about fighting for a relationship. And I said, unless you're talking about a relationship with your children, which you shouldn't have to fight for, but I can understand that because that's your job and your duty as a parent to get right back on the right track. But you shouldn't ever have to fight to keep a relationship alive or to keep it,
Mm.
if it takes that kind of energy and that kind of focus, then it shouldn't. It should be
Mhm.
supportive and beneficial. And if you feel like you have to fight to keep it, then it's probably not worth keeping. And it's probably the very thing that's keeping you stuck.
That's so hard. There's so many people in very difficult relationships, and I think that our society has taught us that divorce is a lot more rampant than it used to be. You used to like it'd be like you do not get divorced, you stay in that because that's so
Yeah.
shameful. So that is changing, but I still think there is some of that. You don't get divorced until you've tried in your
Everything.
power. And like you said, how long and how hard are you supposed to fight for that?
And what are you fighting for?
Mm.
Peace? Because when you walk away, you find, and my very worst day today is 10 times better than my very best day 10 years ago.
Wow.
Can't even tell you that I wake up and I'm like, nobody's plotting against me. I'm not crying. I'm not trying to figure out where you are. I'm not opening up a bank account to see you've drained it. I'm not looking over my shoulder. I still look over my shoulder. I'm not going to lie.
I was gonna say, have you been able to completely cut ties with him, or does he show up? Is he around? What's this? I guess you have kids
Yeah.
with him, so
Yeah.
there's
He has
part of
no
that.
contact with any of my children. I did get sole custody, but I did find out how heavily he was into drugs. Oddly enough, because he did mess with me so many times in so many different levels, I find beer cans around my house, and the first thought is that he did it on
Mm.
purpose. And you say stuff like that, and then you think, "Are you crazy?" Come on. And I know that there, I had taken one night for some reason it was in the, and I have a teenage daughter who's in college now, and I said to her, I'm like, people would think I was crazy if I said that, because there came a point when we were fighting over custody, really. Custody he already had, but anyway, and my lawyer said to me, because he would do stuff like that, he would leave beer cans, he would leave cigarettes, he would leave, just so I knew, there was nails in my tires
Oh,
6 times, and I was afraid. He worked out of town, but I did never know where he was. I still don't know where he lives. But my lawyer said to me, don't call the police because he's painting you crazy. And unless you have video of him, pictures of him, or proof, you
Mm.
cannot call the police. And yeah, that was a really hard thing because I thought nobody believes me. And I'm left here vulnerable. And am I crazy? Because you
Yeah.
try and convince yourself, come on, he would never, but I would never think he did 90% of the things I found out he did. So I don't know what he's capable of.
So how old are your kids? Your youngest kid, you said?
12 and 14, his
Okay.
children are. So I had two more from him. So he
Yeah.
has two and then the
And they
original
have no
four.
contact with him. And he doesn't try. Or does he try and
Yeah.
we don't want him to? Yeah.
No, there was a good almost year of trying to sort out custody, and he was allotted his time. And I coming, and that's another hardship of mine is like my four children lost their dad. The last thing that I would, and I saw what that did to them,
Yeah.
that every child should have that father figure. I support it 100%. And even after all of the things he did to me, I would have supported them having a relationship with him if it was healthy and it
Yeah.
benefited anyone. And so he would tell the courts that I was turning the kids against him. So the court ordered that he would have these phone calls every Tuesdays and Thursdays. He had an hour every Tuesday and Thursday. So I think it added up to 2,000 minutes or whatever it was. He exercised, I want to say like 22. And when he would get together with them, my kids didn't even know him. So the reason why the whole custody thing even started was because my older daughter said, I don't want to see him anymore. And it had nothing to do with me. And I even tried to send him messages and make it nice and say, hey, I think you should sit down and talk with her. I think she's a teenager. She's going through this. Spend some time with her. Tell her that you love her. Reassure her. And of course, instead of doing any of those things, he went straight to the court and said, oh, look, she's alienating me, when it was clear that I was trying to do everything I could. No, they don't have any contact. I've told both of them if at any point they want to, I will facilitate it. I will do everything I can to find him and put them into. And I also said to them, there's never a closed door to these relationships. If at any point you want to open that door up, I will be the facilitator for it. I'll step out of it. I won't get in the middle of it. But if you want to know your dad, that's your right. And I will
Yeah.
support it 100%.
Wow. That's you being the bigger person. So good job with that.
Oh,
But I know
I
that's
don't
got
know
to
if
be
it's a big,
hard.
yeah. I mean, I've always tried, and it was a hard realization. My son did say that about like, why are you letting? Because I feel as if I hope that what I do for my children, even opening up this foundation, is because I have four girls. I never want them to be in a position like I was, hopeless,
Mhm.
helpless, and vulnerable. But yeah, I try to always put their stability and their health at the forefront. It was hard for me to to just say I'm blocking him on your phone because this has gotten to a point where he didn't show up and he didn't call when he should. And I was just seeing a lot of lies back and forth, and it was a difficult decision for me to make. And I still, there's always that thing in the back of my, because I never wanted to make it out of anger on my part or because we were toxic or we had nothing to do with them. That was their relationship, and I always tried to keep it that way. But when the proof was that it just wasn't going to be healthy, then yeah.
Ugh,
So
you've been through so much. How did you, before we start to close out here, I just want to know like what you do you like you've obviously done a lot of healing and you've come out of it. Was there anything that stands out that you can share for what helped you get through it? Maybe the writing or whatever you did?
I'm a huge runner. That's always been my thing. I talk about it in the book a lot. When you run or when you exercise or when you just like go and you just it's like all that energy just dissipates. But I will say one of the biggest lessons I learned, which I think hopefully can help other people, is that I think as women we're so conditioned to worry about what people, and I'm a pleaser by nature
Mm,
anyway, but we're so conditioned to think about what will people say, what will people think. And I made a lot of my decisions based on, oh my gosh, what are people going to think?
mm,
And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what people think. It matters how, if you can look in the mirror and know that that you're making decisions out of kindness and goodness, then, whatever people are saying about you or thinking about you, it's not the you that is true. It's the person, it's a
yeah.
version of you that they've created. And you can't change minds, nor should you have to.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. You've been through a lot and you seem like you're in a really good place right now, so that's amazing. So you have the two books are out, right? Notes from a Blackberry and then From Blackberries to Thorns. Those are the two books that are out.
Yes, the first one's out and it's out on audio. The second one's going to be released later on this year.
Okay. And what about Thorns to Blossoms?
That one I'm still working on. So
Okay,
that's the
that one's
third in the
coming
total. Yeah.
soon.
Yeah. But the first two are my memoirs.
Okay.
From Thorns to Blackberries is like the continuation. And then the third one is going to be just like unpacking tips, just like looking back on all of it, wrapping it up. So.
Okay, cool. And then if people either want to reach out to the outreach for help themselves, or if they maybe want to donate, what's the best way for people to do that?
So if you go to my website, which is juliebarthauthor.com, there are links that go out. My special needs daughter is an artist. She does all
Mm.
sorts of artwork. There's a website where you can buy some of our art, and the proceeds from that go to fund the charity. But if you go to juliebarthauthor.com, there is a Hope for Tate tab, there's a CJB. So it all just circles, but you can get involved. You can reach out to me, and I'm the only person manning the website. So if you need help or if you need something, you will get me directly. So I encourage anybody, if you, like I said, want to get involved, if you need help, even if I can't help you directly, I can point you in the place where you can get what you need, or at least be an ear. Sometimes you
Yeah.
just need that third party.
Yeah, we will link all of that in the show notes, and you're on, it looks like Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, all that stuff too.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, so we will link all that in the show notes. So if anybody listening wants to get involved or needs some help or whatever, maybe just wants to talk to Julie,
Yeah,
I will link. Go ahead.
no, I'm always good to talk.
Yeah, I'll link all that in the show notes. Do you have any parting words for my listeners?
I don't think so. I just think it's important, and I hate to single women out because I know men have their own issues and
Mhm.
trials and tribulations, but I think it's important for women to give themselves the same grace that you give to other people. We're so used to taking on all the negative and giving out positive, but we give everyone else a lot more allowance than we do ourselves. So just try and
Mhm.
give yourself some grace and yeah, be
Life is
good to
hard.
yourself. It is. And nobody makes it out unscathed.
No.
Some people have
No.
harder times than others, but everybody's got their thing. So
100%. 100%. Thank you so much for coming on here and sharing your story. And I know we're recording this on Father's Day. I know that was tough for you. So thank you so much for sharing all of your story and being vulnerable and putting your books into the world and making your nonprofit and all that stuff. Thank you so much for everything. You are a beautiful soul in this world.
thank you, Tawny. Thank you for doing this. You're hopefully
Yeah.
reaching a lot of people. So
I hope so.
yeah, you
Well,
are.
thank you so much for coming on. And everybody else, thanks for listening. I'll see you in the next episode.